Hello and welcome to 50 Years Serving the Island, a series of programmes showcasing highlights from Manx Radio's archives during the station's first 5 decades serving the public here in the Isle of Man. In 1968, Manx Radio was transferred into public ownership to become the island's public service broadcaster. This week, we revisit an edition of Raise the Curtain, a series looking behind the scenes at the various live entertainment venues around the Isle of Man. Presented by Alex Brindley, this edition features a closer look at the Gaiety Theatre, and this programme was first broadcast back in 2009.
Hello, I'm Alex Brindley and welcome to the last in the series of the programme that will uncover the hidden secrets of the island's live entertainment venues. Tonight, join me as I raise the curtain on the Gaiety Theatre. There are certain places you can go where words really can't explain the feeling you get. You know what I mean, when confronted with a stunning natural vista, a great work of art, or an engineering marvel. You get a sense of awe or inspiration, what some may call chicken soup for the soul, a feeling that you have been enriched. There is one place which stands out for me as being one of these locations, and it sits on Harris Promenade in Douglas. Regarded by many as being the masterpiece of architect Frank Matcham, the Gaiety Theatre is today world-renowned as one of the most beautiful, ornate theatres to be found anywhere. In fact, I regularly find myself attending any performance just to sit in the magnificent surroundings. But it hasn't always been in such beautiful condition. In fact, if we go back far enough, it hasn't always been such a decadent, ornate theatre. So, to start with, let's go back to the very beginning. Back to what was there before the Gaiety was even thought of. With Peter Kelly from the Isle of Man Victorian Society.
Well, if we go way back, running across where the Gaiety is and the Villa Marina arcade, there was a terrace of 4 houses, not on the promenade as we know, but set way back on that Marina Lane or Marina Road at the back, and they were back the front houses. In other words, you came in from the rear from that road, and the front elevation was a series of windows, so you had this marvellous view out over the bay, which of course there wasn't a great deal of hubble and bubble going on when they were erected. Now in 1892 a consortium got together and they purchased 2 of the houses, and that's the 2 nearest what is now the Sefton, demolished them, they formed a public company, and they built a huge barn, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. It was called the Marina, and basically it was a Dutch barn type roof, a curved roof, with 4 walls, 2 long ones at the side, a back one and a front one. Front one was in red brick and was quite ornate, and the building had a flat floor inside, not like a theatre, it wasn't raked, it was a flat floor. On this end, on the promenade end, underneath the big curve of the roof was glass, which is incredible when you read the description. It was pink and primrose in a fan shape. So when you're inside in the daytime, the sunlight was coming through, so on the floor there was sort of pink and yellow light. And at night time, when it opened, 1893, they had electric lights, a whole series of little electric lights. So as you're walking past, of course, this was quite a fairy tale sort of thing when other people just had little gas lights. And then in 1899, a new consortium was appearing on the scene, and what they decided to do here was, in fact, to create a proper theatre. And so Frank Matcham was brought in to do something with the Dutch barn. And what he did, first of all, on the front, and it's still there, all that red brick is still underneath there. The end wall, the glass was taken out and bricked up. Obviously you don't want glass into a theatre, which you want to darken. Inside, it was like a stage set. In other words, he built another building within the shell of what was there.
So with an opening performance of The Telephone Girl, the island was introduced to the Gaiety Theatre, and for many years it operated rather unremarkably as a successful live entertainment venue. And as the years and decades progressed, it even attempted to embrace new technology and the change in trends, with cinema equipment being installed, seating altered, and live performers complemented then with celluloid stars of the silver screen. But as time went on, attendances reduced as the tourist industry on the island declined. A number of other island venues sadly disappeared, such as the Grand Palace Coliseum and the Derby Castle Ballroom. But amazingly, the Gaiety survived. Its owners, the Palace and Derby Castle Company, wanted it to face a demolition ball, but thankfully it was saved, and the government bought it for the nation. But it was showing the signs of age, lack of maintenance, and inappropriate alteration. Local filmmaker Charles Gard produced the 1978 pantomime at the theatre, and he recalls the condition the building was in.
It was very poor. The roof leaked. A gale was blowing through it at all times. The heating was very inefficient. The basic things were functioning, but I was intrigued by all this amazing mechanism under the stage, and Tony McAvoy, who was up for anything, persuaded me to start using some of the traps. Now, the traps hadn't been used for years, and he was getting old sailing ropes and bits of weights and things, and unblocking the mechanism, and we actually started to use them. I remember I was on the stage one day, face down, doing some painting, and I was vaguely aware of somebody going up past me vertically. And I looked up, and that person then came back down again, because Tony had used the trap for the very first time, the great stage trap at the front, with far too many weights on, which had ejected this person almost up to the fly floor. And fortunately, they didn't break their legs when they came down. But that was the start of some tremendous fun.
It was obvious that the Gaiety needed a lot of money spending on it, and a group of enthusiasts got together to fight for its survival. The group was the Friends of the Gaiety Theatre. The current chairman of the group, David Stacey, told me how it all started.
Well, it goes back 30 years at a time when the theatre was in a very run-down state. And fortunately, the Isle of Man government bought it rather than have the existing people demolish it. And alongside that, there were already lots of fans of the Gaiety, even though it was in a very poor state. So a number of them, not very many, but a number of them got together, and that's when they formed the Friends of the Gaiety, with a view to trying to help with the restoration of it. But as a lot of people are also aware, that the government made an excellent choice of manager down there in a man called Mervyn Stokes, a man who lived, breathed, did everything else to do with that theatre, and was determined to see it restored into the condition it was. So they couldn't have chosen. It was a fantastic decision, whoever it was. I can't commend the government enough for trying their best to make sure that the Gaiety is kept in its existing profile and fully used at reasonable rates, and I do know they are very, very reasonable rates. So it's a very good way for the community and through the Friends of the Gaiety to join in that investment rather than leave it all down to government by providing, as I say, around 50% of the staff. Clearly, that accounts for tens of thousands of pounds for each year, but it's given freely by the members who do it. It would just be nice if we could have a few more.
So at this point in history, the theatre was safe. The fabric of the building was repaired, but the once grand interior needed serious attention, as plasterwork, fresco paintings, doors and ornate features had been damaged, badly treated, or simply painted over the years. As David Stacey mentioned, the then theatre manager, Mervyn Stokes, MBE, spearheaded a restoration campaign which planned, over a period of 10 years, to have the theatre back to near original condition by the time of the theatre centenary in 2000. Speaking to Geraldine Jameson on Manx Radio in 2006, Mervyn recalls the work involved and the attention to detail that was required.
We have been so lucky, so very lucky. We knew what the wallpaper looked like because we had a photograph of 1900 on the opening night. So we knew the pattern, but of course we didn't know the colourway. And we knew the pattern for 15 years or more before we actually found this minute scrap of paper. It was no more than about 1/4 of an inch long and 1/2 an inch wide, stuck behind a door architrave. And the door had gone wrong, or the hinges had gone wrong, and the architrave was taken off. And I was just passing, just that moment he took it off, and there it was, this little bit of paper which said, "I'm the original wallpaper and this is the original colour." And so from that it only took us about 2 months to get the wallpaper made and put on the wall.
Down the years of this restoration, you did get in a lot of experts, or you went to a lot of experts, didn't you, for assistance?
Yes, we did. We asked all the way down because I didn't want at the end of the day to get something wrong. And it's so easy to get things wrong if you don't do the groundwork. And of course the groundwork was done thoroughly. I mean, everything was scraped back to bare plaster and bare wood to find original colours. And so I think we can say with our hand on our heart the Gaiety is actually right. On the 7th of October in 2002, the Gaiety Theatre was listed. It's never been listed before, and it became a listed Manx building. Now, part of the listing, the requirement of a listing, is that a proper record is made of the building. And so the listing committee appointed Michael Thompson, our well-known local photographer, to actually spend 18 months with me in the Gaiety, photographing everything exhaustively. And the idea being that, heaven forbid, there's an accident with the Gaiety, there is a record of everything there so that it could be put back if that is the desire of the Isle of Man. Isle of Man, this is it. This is how it must remain because it's unique. If you see anybody tampering with it, for goodness sake, say something, you know. This is it. You must be the guardian of the Gaiety Theatre.
You're listening to 50 Years Serving the Island, a series of programmes showcasing highlights from Manx Radio's archives during the station's first 5 decades serving the public in the Isle of Man. This week we're revisiting Raise the Curtain, a series of programmes looking behind the scenes at the various live entertainment venues around the island, first broadcast in 2009 and presented by Alex Brindley. This edition features a closer look at the Gaiety Theatre.
Following a huge collaboration effort between government and local sponsors, the result of the restoration project is now evident for all to see. But there are areas of the theatre that the public don't get to see. So the theatre's technical manager, Seamus Shea, met me to give me a glimpse behind the scenes. Now, Seamus, we've come to a part of the theatre that, for a start, isn't for the faint-hearted, and I presume this is an area that the public, to be honest, pretty much never get to see.
No, we're above the dome, literally above the ceiling, above the auditorium. And we are standing, although on safe ground, we are above probably a very, very fragile part of the theatre, which is the domed roof, which has already gone through major restoration to stop it falling through onto people's heads.
Well, looking below this steel walkway we're on now, which is obviously a modern walkway, it's been put in for access, is that it looks just like a massive plaster cast.
Well, technically, yes, that's what it is. We're looking at the back of the very pretty plasterwork, and this is a lot more functional, this side of it. And what happened, the original dome ceiling slightly caved in due to exposure to outside forces of weather and general age. So in 1990, they actually restored the ceiling by pulling it back, by using the original methods of tie bars and covering it in plaster of Paris to hold it in position. So though it does look a little fragile, it is actually very strong.
It's all held up on a wooden frame from here, and it's within this domed roof. Now, originally, before the Gaiety became the Gaiety, it was the pavilion, and I presume this is the original ceiling level?
Yep, we are just inside the vaulted ceiling, which would have been original to 1896, which still remains in its shape and form to this very day. That barrel vault roof would have run from the very front of the building to the very back of the stage, where the stage now is, and it would have been covered in a very ornate plaster ceiling, which we'll have a look at in a minute. But that is non-existent up here, whether that's fallen away or been beaten away. But it's now we're just looking at a very basic timber, a vaulted roof.
And one part behind me, if we take a little walk back across this little drawbridge, as I said, space up here is at a premium. We walk back towards the promenade side of the theatre, and there's a big steel bracket there which blatantly with a motor on it is not original, but it plays a very important part.
That was put in 2000, Alex, and that is for the front of house lighting bar. And we have quite a weighty motor which offers us the option to totally draw out the lighting bar. So if you stand on the stage, it draws the lighting bar out of sight completely. So if we were doing any sort of period filming or photo shoots, the room would look as it was in 1900.
Before we make our way into the main auditorium, Seamus, we've come into, well, it's the area at the very back of the gallery. It's the highest area we can get. And you walk through here, and this is just like stepping back in time, isn't it?
Well, this would have been the epicenter, really, of all the technical controls. You would have had the original turntable here with the old 78s on it, which would have been the warm-up music for the audience as they came in. You've got the original soundboard there that would have not only controlled the pre-music, but also the audio from the actual projectors. And these two projectors, which are the original for the Gaiety, would have run in sequence. You would have had reel 1 on the left, for example, or on projector A, and then you would have travelled over to projector B. And then you've got the smaller projector, which was the advertising projector, which sequenced just hand-painted glass slides.
And you've got quite a number of them still on display here, and they're beautiful.
I don't know if you remember at school when you did the crayon on the paper with the black wax over the top of it, and you just scraped off the top. And you don't know what colours you were going to face underneath, but you had this magical sort of revelation. So, yeah, and people could do these on the night, and they advertised all sorts of forthcoming events. They possibly also did ice creams and soft drinks as well.
OK, Seamus, we've come now to the very top of the gallery, and the ceiling you were referring to that we found the remains of in the Lighting Museum at the back is very much in evidence above our heads.
Yep, this is the restoration part of it. This was done in 1995, 96. This area where we're standing would have been mainly restored in the 1930s to sort of cinema style, which was sort of Art Deco or late Art Deco. It was nice in its own self, but it didn't suit the building, and it wasn't original to the theatre. So when we did find the network of plasterwork in the old projection room, it was then quite easy, as I said, to take casts and get those recreated, get them shipped over, and get them recreated as we can see them here, and then decorated to the original specification.
And the other thing you notice up here in the gallery, now, I know a bit of the story behind this, but I'd like you to tell me the full details, is that when you're walking down the gallery steps, which have been restored, as you say, in recent years, on the wall there seems to be a line of steps that don't kind of match the real steps. What's all that about?
Now, what we're seeing on the wall is the original layout of the flooring, but it's incredibly inconsistent because what happened was, I think it started off at level 1 and then level 2 was added. But what we can see, Alex, is different step levels. So I'm looking at one now where the actual standing platform of the step is possibly about 2 foot deep. The next step is about 1 foot deep, and then I can see one that's possibly about 6 inches deep.
And finally, from up here, I'm going to have to ask you, because we've almost avoided it when walking around the theatre, but every theatre has stories of ghosts and hauntings, and I would assume the Gaiety's are no different.
I believe that there are some stories of elements of the unnatural or the supernatural. But I think throughout my time here, all the stories are inconsistent, and I think it's a load of codswallop.
But let's face it, though, it wouldn't be a good old theatre without them.
I think it's the speculation that's more exciting than the actual.
And finally, when looking at this building, you walk around it. It is, of course, primarily a theatre. It is a building of entertainment. But would you say now that looking back over its history, now it fulfills many more roles from the heritage, the history point of view, as well as the entertainment point of view? Yeah,
I think so. I think the first and foremost is the 8 o'clock of a night when the show's up and running and the audience are in, and a lot of things around that. The comfort of the audience, the room, the whole experience of going to the theatre. But I think, allied with that is the accolade that the theatre has achieved, that the island has achieved for maintaining and restoring, a real special gem that people have travelled from all over the world to see an original Matcham theatre virtually as good as the day it opened.
Sadly, I don't have time to include the full tour in this programme. But if you're an MR Plus member, you can download the tour on the MR Plus website in the download section. Despite how wonderful the theatre is, it isn't a museum. It's a working theatre. So what is it like to perform there? Matthew James is a well-known local face on the Gaiety stage, and he's also part of Taylorian Productions, who are performing The King and I as the summer show at the theatre this year. But what is his first memory of performing there?
I had to lay in a coffin. I had great fun doing that because that was the first time when I met the Kane brothers, Chris and Howard, and Rini Paradise and people like that who were all involved, and Rini Savage, and it was a real call. It was when I first moved to the island back in 1988. So obviously lying in the coffin on stage, I didn't realise that at them times that people could see you from the dress circle and the gods. So when Chris Kane comes bundling on the stage, I waved to him, which creased up the reporter from the papers that night, and got a little report saying corpse waved away. Got a bit of a ticking off from the staff backstage then, but it was all good part of education. It was great.
Now, since then, of course, you've become a very well-known face and name on the Gaiety stage. The theatre itself, do you think it stands out in comparison with other performance venues?
It's been my life. Apart from taking a 10-year gap off the island when I went away to perform professionally, coming back to the island has been the nest egg and literally my life since 1990. And luckily enough, I have been able to play some of those fabulous parts, in which is the most beautiful theatre anyone can ever imagine.
David Artis is also a well-known star of the Gaiety stage, and as part of Dreamstar Productions, is writing and directing the pantomime this year. But as fond as he is of the theatre, he wasn't enthusiastic about stepping foot onto the Gaiety stage at first.
Well, I was kind of dragged kicking and screaming into the theatre because my family moved over from Manchester when I was 12. Some other family members moved over, and one of those family members was Christine Wilde, of course, famous for the Christine Wilde Theatre School, and my mother used to take the money at the dance school. And one week I was asked to move a bit of scenery on the stage, and very, very gradually I got into performing. And of course, once you've got that performance bug, it kind of sticks with you. I mean, I can't say I'm the most well-travelled actor, but I have worked in a number of theatres in the UK, and I guess the way that you could describe the best one I've worked in would be soulless. In as much as, maybe they were quite ostentatious theatres at one time, but then, they've been rationalised and things have fallen off and not been replaced, and, bits of chipboard put up there. But the Gaiety has had a lot of love and attention over the years, and it's pretty resplendent, really, isn't it? You walk in and you can almost feel all the performers for all of the years that they've been there, treading the boards, and you're following this path, and you're looking at the same scenery that they've looked at, but also just the acoustics of the place as well, because it's a fairly intimate theatre. Even if you're playing to someone in the gods, if the lights were right, you can see their face and you can see their reaction. You can certainly hear them in a panto or something like that. So, yeah, it's really, really friendly.
For those who think the work is now complete, you couldn't be more wrong. Keeping the Gaiety in such beautiful condition for future generations is arguably a harder task than restoring it. When the barrier doors get removed, they should be replaced. When wallpaper gets ripped, the cheapest alternative from the DIY store must not be used, otherwise history will simply repeat itself in time. I'm almost lost for words at this point to sum up the Gaiety Theatre in terms of a live entertainment venue and what makes it so special. There are no words that adequately seem to convey just how unique and beautiful the theatre is. Suffice to say that it's Frank Matcham's greatest work of art, and a legacy that we are extremely lucky to have been left. It's a building that houses entertainment that inspires laughter and tears from its audience, and inspires the soul in all of us, from its beauty and its very existence. And for that reason, it must remain a fiercely guarded legacy for the next generation.
You've been listening to an edition of Raise the Curtain, presented by Alex Brindley and first broadcast in 2009. The full programme is now available at manxradio.com/portal, along with lots of exclusive content from Manx Radio's first 5 decades as the island's public service broadcaster.